Hey guys, welcome back. So now we are getting back into Extreme Carnage with Extreme Carnage Lasher. And man, this one gets dark. But then also throughout the course of this, we get the most recent transition of Andy Benton to her new, and I say new with the asterisk on it, but we get the transition of Andy Benton to her new symbiotic alias. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so with Extreme Carnage Lasher, this picks up immediately from the cliffhanger of Extreme Carnage Phage, with what seemed to be like an instant kill from your Carnage possessing Phage symbiote who was sent to Alkamax to seek revenge on Andy Benton. But of course, this is one of those things with fictional stories and not just comic books, but it's one of those things where depending on how significant you are to either the story, or in other cases if you're just someone who the fans love, because in that case then you're somebody who'll just live forever. But in this case with Andy, who uses her Hellmark to push Phage back, her Hellmark, which she had got from Flash Thompson when she became Mania, it buys her a few more seconds of time, but even still she's in that finish her state where she can barely do anything. But then when Phage goes to kill Andy, which again in the case of Phage is more so Carnage pulling the strings, but before Phage can deliver the killing blow, he's held off by Flash, who is then approached by the guardsman, which in itself is something kind of funny because with Phage being the one going on the murder streak and Flash trying to stop him, the guardsmen instead still go for Flash. And in this case you can tell they're going for the least scariest threat, and Flash picks that up like right away. And as a result, one of these guys just gets their head slapped off because that's the kind of thing that happens when you turn your back on the most dangerous person in the room. Like, what was that guy expecting? But then it's after this when we catch up with Lasher, who from the last time we had seen him in Planet of the Symbiotes, when at the time he was still along with the other Life Foundation symbiotes and also under the influence of Knull. But after he was defeated by Andy Benton, who was Scream at the time, this had then separated him from the other Life Foundation symbiotes, Phage, Riot, and Agony. But since then, with him free now, he's been kind of carving his own path, and from what we find when we pick up with him here, he's been jumping from host to host and really just trying to find a less violent way of life for himself. But when we catch up with him here, we find him at a nursing home bonding with this elderly man by the name of William, who's likely suffering from dementia. But as soon as Lasher bonds with him, it turns out that William was watching Arthur Crane on a broadcast, which like we'd seen before, Carnage has been using in order to call other symbiotes to head to Washington DC and make their way and rally over to him. And when this happens and the thrumming sound starts coming through the television, this immediately then pulls on Lasher, who tries to resist, but with attempting to resist and telling Carnage that he doesn't want a part in his cause, this then presents the case to where Carnage bypasses Lasher and he makes his way to appeal to William and manipulate him in order to make Lasher go to DC. But also while this is happening, and Carnage is just using Phage to make guardsmen kebabs over at Alkamax, because when you have your own hive, multitasking is definitely just a thing. But with all of these guardsmen occupied by force and not choice, it's here where Flash then takes the opportunity to snatch up Andy, who's barely hanging on to life, and rush her over to Dr. Steven so that he can hopefully help. But with making his way to Dr. Steven, there's really no time to explain what happened because she could go at any minute. And with bringing her here, Flash asks, like, is there anything left of her Scream symbiote? Because if she can just get like the smallest shred, then that alone could possibly save her life. But then it's here where Dr. Steven tells Flash that the Scream symbiote was damaged beyond repair. And like we'd seen before with him trying to help the symbiote, the most that he could do was splice it with another, which in this case what he had were samples of Flash's anti-venom symbiote. And when he tells this to Flash, it immediately comes as a shocker. But while Flash is talking to Dr. Steven and trying to figure this out, Andy, who literally has a burning hellhole in her chest, she just takes matters into her own hands and she reaches for Scream and breaks it out of the glass canister, because at this point she really just doesn't have the time to sit through a lecture of the specific intricacies of what Dr. Stevens needed to do to keep Scream alive. But when she breaks the glass container open and they start to bond, it's here where she then finds out that her symbiote isn't quite what it used to be. But now, due to Scream's genetic splicing with anti-venom, the symbiote now introduces itself to Andy as the absence of Scream, the negative space of noise, the sound of silence, which from here moving forward is pretty much going to be her new identity. And with this happening, it feels very fitting, and mainly with Andy Benton being the most recent Scream host and her history being tied so close to Flash, so with her getting an anti-venom like change in a very similar way to the way Flash got his, like, it just makes sense. But then as far as the whole naming thing, with her name now being Silence, that part I think I'm gonna need some time to grow on me, because as soon as I heard the name Silence, I couldn't help but think of Dragonfly saying silence. So I'm just gonna need a little bit of time to push that out and welcome this in. That's all. But then also at this time, in the case of William, who's the current host of Lasher, like it's here where we see him pulled more or less into Carnage's hive, to where Carnage causes him to believe that he's seeing his wife Susie. And with the way that this is done and how Carnage is just trying to appeal to William's thoughts and his memories, Carnage also then offers to restore William's lost memories and more or less cure his ailment. And with Lasher trying to help William and tell him like, don't listen to Carnage, he's just using you. But William doesn't listen and he accepts Carnage's offer, to where with doing so, on the outside, like in the real world, William is just creating a path of destruction using the Lasher symbiote while also following what he believes to be an image of his wife, when in actuality it's really Carnage luring William out to DC, which is really where it gets messed up, because along the way, Carnage takes William to find his son, and with doing so, Carnage just uses him to impale this kid. But also when this happens, we find out through Lasher that along this journey, William's physical body has already died. Both William accepting Carnage's offer and letting him in, this allowed Carnage to use William's memories as a tool for William to bring him Lasher, and at this point that's something that William just can't take back. But then from here, going closer to the time where everything's going crazy at Alkamax with Flash, Andy, and Phage, this chaos then also makes the news, and with doing so it gets the attention of Brent Waters, who's your current host of the Toxin symbiote. And luckily he caught this breaking news after changing the channel from watching like the Muppets version of Endgame, which even in the case of that program, it looked like it was a subliminal coming from Carnage. But with Brent seeing that Alkamax was under attack, he immediately rushed out to help his dad, because like we had seen in Planet of the Symbiotes, his dad is one of the guardsmen. But as far as Brent making his way to Alkamax, that's more so something addressed in the next issue, because when we jump over to Alkamax here, we just jump right into Silence going after Phage, which again is Phage/Carnage. But with how this goes down, and Carnage likely at this point assuming that Andy's dead, so when Silence now steps out and she just goes to putting the smack down on Phage, this immediately has Carnage like, who are you supposed to be? With him also assuming that she's just another lab rat from Alkamax who had likely just escaped. But with Silence going up against this version of Phage, she does get a bit dramatic with the monologue, and with doing so she uses her newly found anti-venom properties and she just slaps him on the top lip with the bubble shush, while telling him that Silence is golden, and then using her hair to just thwip him out the window. And when she does this, in a way I kind of feel like it's a bit of foreshadowing, with it kind of showing us that this new character that she's become, how it's going to be a mixture of both anti-venom and Scream, but then also that's just another thing that we'll kind of just have to see over the course of time. But in the case of Phage, with him falling out the building, like when he hits the ground, it's here where he's then approached by Mitch once again, who catches the scent of his original owner and he goes to lick the wounds, and it's right then when Phage just bonds to him again. But also at this point where you have this new Andy who had just recently bonded with this questionable new symbiote, and when this happens, it's here where Flash kind of has a moment to where he's not really sure if Andy is aware or she's really in there. But then check this out. So when Flash approaches her and he asks her, Andy, are you okay? And when I first read this, I gotta confess, for a solid 3 minutes, I started singing, Andy, are you okay? Are you okay? And y'all probably think I'm playing, but it got bad. Like it went up, I went through the hook and everything. Like I don't understand. I was like, are you okay, Andy? Like I got up and started clapping. Yeah, like I had a moment. But like with what's happening here, we also kind of have this lingering case of suspicion to where Flash isn't sure if this is actually Andy or any likeness of Scream for that matter, and when she doesn't respond and she's actually silent, now it really leaves Flash to wonder who exactly he's dealing with. But then also as all of this draws to a close, we then go over to DC to where we find that Lasher has made his way there. And at this point with William, who is the host, who mind you, again, he has been dead for some time at this point, but with his brain still working, he tells Carnage to put him down, and Carnage just drops his dead body right in front of the Lincoln Monument. And when this happens, what's left of William, which is really just the memory or the codex at this point, he then asks Carnage like, how is he still alive? And it's here where Carnage tells him, well, you know, you have your cases where the body may fail, but the mind will keep going. And with saying this, he tells William that he appreciates him bringing Lasher back to him and reuniting him with his kin, so to speak. And with saying this, he tells William more or less that he's going to do him the same favor. And with saying this, he just discards William, allowing him to die so that he can literally be reunited with his family. And after that, we then go back to one of Crane's speeches, which Carnage has been using to get out to the rest of the symbiotes, who in this case I believe are just either his siblings, as far as offsprings from the Venom symbiote, and his own offspring, which it appears at this point like that's what his hive is limited to. But with the scene of speech from Crane, which is practically Carnage, it's centered around of how the people will not be silenced anymore, and with those choice words, it kind of sounds like shots being thrown at Andy in her new symbiote. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons, Thank you guys for all of your support, and for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below so we can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.